It's no secret that compost is the way to go. And when you have as much shrubs as we do, you certainly get quite a bit about. Well, 1, 2, 3. We have about 3 yards already, because that's what each one of our compost holds. And as you can see, we're overflowing. So we wanted to make you guys a video about our expansion. So this is what everything looks like right now. We have a bunch of logs from a tree that had come down. Hans had built this 3 canister to hold our compost that we already had. And pretty soon we're expanding it this way. So stay tuned for more clips of that.
Hey guys, Ash had mentioned that our compost system is completely overfilling, and she's absolutely right. We've got piles of brush we've been taking down all around the property, and yeah, we need some more space for all of this compost. And pretty simple system. It's kind of based off the Charles Dowding technique, which is a big departure from how I was doing compost in the past. Actually, if you wanted to follow me real quick. Might not show up on camera, but this random round chunk of different grass actually used to be my first compost attempt, which was literally just kind of like a farm system where you just pile up mounds and mounds of hay and kitchen scraps and yard waste, and eventually it all just breaks down. But to try to get that hot compost that you want for a backyard garden, it really wasn't working. Was attracting a lot of rats and pests too. Some of our neighbors even mentioned that they were seeing quite a lot of rats, so we decided it was time to try something new. So what we ended up doing is this system here. And currently what we've got are 3 bins, and each of these bins is approximately 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot tall, which means you've got about a yard of material in them. And as stuff breaks down, they get a little bit smaller, but we keep kind of building them up to keep it around a yard of natural material in here. But again, as we can see, we've got way more material than we currently know what to do with, so we're going to add another bin today, and then a little bit later on down the road, we're going to add probably a 5th bin. And I'm hoping at that point 5 yards of compost kind of made throughout the year is going to be enough that we can use it to top up all of our 12 garden beds. We'll see. That'll kind of come with trial and error if it's enough material. But for now, I designed the whole system so that it can be expandable. The way these bins work is it's all plywood. This is all leftover material actually from our wedding. We had done our little pavilion out here in the backyard, and we had laid down a whole bunch of plywood just to have a dance floor and a place to sit. But it's plywood sides and then scrap lumber for the verticals, and they're pretty simple. If you can see, it's just a 2x6 and a 2x2 and screwed together and then screwed on plywood sides. And what you end up with actually, which helps I think for ventilation and all that, is you end up with a little bit of a space between the 2 pieces of plywood, which helps these breathe a little bit. But we are trying to keep everything really well contained and keep the ants off of ourselves. And the fronts though are slatted, so that way as we're working up, we can just keep adding in. These are 1 by 3 foot sections, and what it lets you do is, this one's full of tomatoes currently, so
Volunteer tomatoes.
yeah, we haven't obviously let anything be added here, but what you can do is you can pull that up, and there you go. You can actually see what compost actually looks like.
And that's just the first layer.
Yeah,
Obviously,
it gets better as you go deeper and deeper in there. But yeah, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna build another bin, and we're gonna chop up all of this yard waste and throw it in. So yeah, you'll see us in a minute actually putting this whole thing together. So what we've got here is some leftover some people call it pressboard. We usually refer to it as OSB. This is leftover material from an old roof we had on the property beforehand. Lumber prices being what they are these days, we're trying not to throw anything away and reuse everything that we can. So I'm just going to start by doing this side panel here. And the way the system works is you do your side panel, and your back fits between them, locks it together, and then we'll do the front boards. But pretty simple. All these pieces need to be 3 foot long, 3 foot tall. Aside from the back one, I don't really care if they're stacked together or built up in multiple pieces. So these are right now just under 2 foot by 3 foot long. So I'll be able to get 2 pieces out of this. And yeah, gonna throw some hearing protection in here because saws and drills are loud, and I already have some hearing damage that I'm not very happy about. But
so fair warning to anybody who does use headphones, this next little section might get a little loud if I don't, also fall over logs.
one piece. And
it's a very hot day today.
Just going to be using these 1 5/8 deck screws. Really simple. This isn't structural or anything like that. You just need a couple screws to hold everything together so it doesn't fall apart once you start filling it up with material.
We mentioned how we're sure the spiders love us because although these do have some space for ventilation, it certainly also adds a little hidey hole, which we don't mind. There's lots of bugs that come with composting. So, may as well add to the ecosystems with the spiders as well. A lot of even the brace pieces that we're using are recycled, as I'm sure some of you noticed. Over there we kind of have a wood yard. It's a mixture of items that are pieces from past projects, spare pallets from orders, slabs of wood from trees brought down, free gates from free websites. Certainly comes in handy.
So we got the first couple pieces up on this first side, and obviously you can see it's kind of 2 pieces put together. No need for this to be one whole solid piece of plywood. Like I said, we're just using up leftover materials from what we've had. Lumber is crazy expensive right now, so anything we can recycle is really helping A, the environment, and B, our pocket, because I don't know, I think a piece of OSB right now, 4x8, 7/16 stuff is like $40. A year ago it was like $11, so we're trying to use up what we got, and all of this is leftover. We used to have a lumber pile sitting on our back deck, the old back deck, and this was the roof for it. So we salvaged all that when that came down, and this is the perfect place to use it up. So building the other side now, what we've got here, pretty simple system. You take a a 2x6, again, can be patched together. It doesn't need to be one solid piece. This is a compost bin. This isn't high construction. This isn't anything fancy. 2x6, 2x2 screwed to that makes up a kind of a short little T. OSB or plywood screwed right to the side of that. Each bin, the first bin needs a set of them, and you actually make an L there instead of a T because it's the end. It can't go any farther, but every other one takes these T's. So every time we add an expansion, we just need to make another set of T's, and that's what I'm doing right now. First piece, take find a scrap here somewhere. Hopefully that's long enough. We'll have to go looking through the pile. I think that'll be close enough, so we'll take that. Another screw from over here. There's the second one. There's the start of the side. Like I said, this ends up being 36 inches tall, so now I got to cut another piece that's 36 by whatever the difference of the first piece is. So we are currently at 24 inches, so 36 by 12 inches. Pretty easy math on that one.
Probably compost about 2 whole human adults in here, as seen by my husband. who is about half of one compost bear.
I think what you're telling me is I need to eat more cheeseburgers.
Exactly, more cheeseburgers. Higher yields of compost. Not sure how that works though. You don't want to compost cheeseburgers.
No, it's one of the few things we don't throw in our compost bins is we don't throw in any dairy. We don't throw in any meat. We will throw in bones if they're really clean, because they do break down. They do eventually produce a bunch of calcium. It's kind of the same idea with like an eggshell. But no dairy, no meat. A lot of people say you can. I've tried it before. Eventually it does break down. The big issue though for the meat and the dairy is rats, and we're trying to keep the pests to a minimum. Actually, since we started doing this 3-bin system, we've had no rats in the compost. Birds, usually they'll pick away at the top when we throw in stuff right away, but no rats, no mice, nothing, no raccoons, and we've got neighborhood foxes and groundhogs and stuff like that. None of them have dug up anything out of these bins. Compared to the last 2 systems we tried, they got dug up constantly. I think actually last year when we did the trough style compost system, I'm pretty sure we had a whole colony of rats live in it over the winter, because when we went to dig it up it was full of tunnels. So this system's working a lot better for keeping our pest pressure down. But yeah, basically that's pretty much set up. The only parts that don't get screwed on are the front slats, and that way they just stay in place with the weight of the compost material in the bin. And this way, as you're building up your layers, you can add the front slats in, and then if you needed to scoop stuff out, you can just pull the front slats out of the way and get into the compost. So now that this thing's filled up, we'll leave that piece there. But what we're going to actually end up doing is we're going to take this bin right beside it, and we're actually going to turn this one into this one, and then we're going to start filling up this space. We don't turn our bins too often. Couple times a year, kind of aiming for around maybe 4 times a year, and that's all going to depend on next year. Our system's going to be a little bit more streamlined because we're kind of building these, and unfortunately the bins are out of order now. This is the fullest and oldest bin. We're not going to touch this one anymore. This one's about to be turned, and then once the 5th bin goes in, this R1 will get turned into the 5th bin, and then we'll start building up that one as well. But for now, yeah, bin, what we would call number 3. We started with closest to the house is number 1, so bin 3 is going into bin 4. Eventually bin 1 will go into bin 5, and bin 1 will be started anew. And bin number 2, which has these beautiful volunteer tomatoes, is what we're effectively doing is, Dowding calls it curing, and effectively what it is you stop adding any material to the compost, and you just let it kind of cook and cool off, because what we're intending to do is use it as a top dressing for this this bed once our garlic goes into it, and we don't want hot compost going over top of garlic because there's a good chance you'll cook it and kill it and it won't grow. So yeah, that's where we're at now, and I think we'll see you guys in a little bit once we're knee deep in compost shoveling.
Here we are just prepping the bottom layer of the compost. We usually like to use heavier brush that we find around our property that we need to cut back just because it is really wet, thicker kind of sticks and logs Typically what Hans does is puts up a barrier, the first layer, fills it to a fairly thick layer. This also helps with the rodents, which we so far have been really lucky and haven't had. But we figured it would be a thicker barrier than doing some lighter brush that they can dig through. And then the idea is we're going to scoop out this bay as well. And I hope you enjoy these clips of us doing that in super speed.
So what you can see here is in process compost. We've got a good amount of woody carbon material, a lot of bark, a lot of twigs. Like we were saying earlier, we do a lot of brush clearing around here. We've got some old hedges that are just completely overgrown, so we keep trimming them back. They take a long time to break down, but all the fine matter in there is a lot of our greens, all of our kind of garden trimmings, our household kitchen waste, lawn clippings. You wouldn't even be able to tell that there's been, I don't know, probably 5-6 loads worth of lawn clippings dumped into here. Not a single shred of grass seems to be left, but maybe a little bit right there. But yeah, the big chunks of wood in here are stuff that was just way too soft to go into our firewood pile. And what will end up happening is when we go to use this in the fall, we'll just sift that stuff out and throw it right back into the compost and let it keep breaking down. One of the cool things about unfinished compost is you don't have to throw it away. You just put it back into compost and you wait till next year. And eventually it'll be perfect. But for now, lots of shoveling. And it's hot, so shoveling kind of sucks.
So we'll see you soon, because we're both going to do it together. Hey everybody, Ashley here. It's actually the next day because yesterday was way too hot. I'm out here in the morning. You can already see on my face. It's a hot one here today as well. But I did finish up the compost while Hans has started work for the day, and I just wanted to show you what it looked like. So we had left off with this bin still having a fair bit of compost in it. You can see there we've more or less scooped everything out and we've transferred it over. I just wanted to show you guys kind of what it looked like at the bottom. You can see there's a lot of sawdust throughout here and a lot more bigger sticks, but it certainly is breaking down into like a soil that we can use here, and we're looking very forward to it. This is kind of what compost looks like in between, so you can still see we have tiny little bit of green matter, stuff that shouldn't be here. Take that out. And then yeah, sticks, chunky matter, that sort of thing. So this isn't ready to go in the garden beds, but it is certainly on its way. Now my project though is that big pile, putting it into here. So I'll catch back with you soon. Whew, we got it all. Ew. Let's talk about this. So you'll kind of see, and I'm sure you saw in the previous slide, that we mostly had green matter. We actually had 2 clear plastic bags that had a bunch of twigs in it. You can see these twigs look a little bit different because they've already started to decay and mold. We had trimmed off a bunch of foliage around our property that were really heavily infested with aphids, and we had put them into the clear plastic bags in the sun to basically kill any of the bugs. And of course, this is a great method if you want to keep your brush but you don't want to add more into the population. We just kept it for a couple of weeks. It started to all deteriorate, and this is what we're left with. So part of the job was already done in the bags by some of the critters, and we are able to keep what would otherwise go to our city compost dump. So right now we have a nice clear spot here, but dun 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 dun, my project for today is to chop down this little guy in front. So I'll catch you back when we fill up even more. Well, folks, there you have it. What used to be a tree is filled up. Now I'm going to pass you back to Hans, and he's going to tell you kind of what we do next.
Hey guys, so Ashley got our bins finished off, got all of our brush cut up and put in here. Obviously still got to add a couple boards to the front here. Do that later, but what we did want to show you was kind of how we build up the layers inside these compost bins, because getting those layers, there's a slight science to it, but nothing too critical. Actually, as I found out kind of through trial and error, mostly what you're looking for is layers of green material, brown materials, green materials, brown materials. Brown materials are your high carbon materials. Think wood chips, shavings of the wood shop, papers, wood chips, bark, all that kind of stuff. Those are your browns. And your greens are going to be things like your lawn clippings, or your garden scraps, or your kitchen scraps. And pretty much what you want to try to do is, like I said, this isn't pretty much not entirely ready to go. Most of this material is actually going to go into this bin, but what you would do is put down a layer, a small section right here. It's actually kind of crazy. These are grass clippings from just a couple hours ago, and they are warm right now. That's where the warm composting comes from, is actually the green layers, and you need your brown layers to kind of balance all that out. If it gets too hot, it'll cook everything, kill off all the microbes. If it doesn't get hot enough, things like pathogens, seeds, weeds don't get broken down and don't turn into really good compost. The other thing that'll help break compost or cool compost down as well is rain, which is one of the reasons I haven't put covers on this stuff yet. You do need some moisture in your compost to aid in microbe development and breakdown, but the rain and adding water can also just help lower that temperature. But in this case, put a layer of green down, such as the grass clippings, or this is some old lettuce we had too. Put it down, do a nice even layer across the whole bed, and then need to gather up a little bit more of my shavings right now, kind of running low. But then what you would do is layer of the brown right over top, and you're kind of aiming for a 50-50 mixture. And yeah, and then you just kind of wait, and then as you get more green materials, you could then build up another layer right on top of that.
It's kind of like a compost lasagna.
kind of like a compost lasagna, yeah. And what you'll find is you'll be able to build this up to the top of the 3 feet. Give it a couple of days and it'll probably sink down at least by a third. Build it up again, let it sink down, build up again, let it sink down. Eventually you'll build it up and let it sink down enough times, and then you're going to turn it, and then you're going to leave it. Before you go to use your compost, especially if you're going to plant directly into it right away, you want your compost to be cold. You don't want the compost hot when you go to plant into it, because if it's still hot, it can really change your seed germination and plant development right at the beginning. Though at the same time, you could also probably use that to your advantage if you're really cold at the beginning of the season and you've got certain plants that need a warmer germination temperature. You could potentially try to use that warmer compost to try to speed things along. I'm not sure I'd try that myself. I don't really believe I've got the skill yet down, so I don't know if I'd go for it. But yeah, guys, that's the idea. That's how the compost system is going to work. Like I said, the next stage for us is just add a couple boards here, start filling up this bin. This bin we can probably make one more layer on and then let it sit for a while. In the fall for us, the plan is everything will come out of the beds. We're going to top up with our compost, and then it's going to sit over the winter. And then in the spring, the beds will be full of good new compost, good nutrients, and we'll be able to plant directly into that. We're really excited. This is going to be our first year using our own homemade compost to actually give us soil fertility. And it's something I've been working on for quite a while, so I'm really, really looking forward to it. Guys, thank you so much for following along on this project. We really appreciate it. If you have any questions or if you have any tips, we'd love to hear from you, so you can drop those below in the comment section. Can't wait to hear from you. We'll see you guys next time.